one of my favorite rock stories ever. It's one my dad told me about when I was a kid. On his way back from Europe, one of rock's greatest icons was emotionally drained. He was disillusioned to the point of nearly quitting music altogether. When he got back home, he started pouring these raw emotions onto paper. Not thinking about a song, really, just scribbling his frustrations across 10 to 20 pages. Then he stashed it away, thinking it was just scattered ramblings. It was nothing. But those words didn't stay hidden for long. They took shape. They emerged as an unfiltered 6-minute epic. It baffled radio stations and record execs alike, but then something completely unexpected happened. This artist had created more than just a song. It became a cultural earthquake. A song twice as long as any on radio at that time became a smash, with a voice that many would say wasn't any good, was terrible. But it inspired Jimi Hendrix to believe he could not only play guitar, but sing as well. It would inspire legends for decades to come, and the lyrics would sell for $2 million just decades later. It's an incredible story, and it's coming up next on Professor of Rock. Hey, music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time, especially today. You know, if you remember the different athletes peddling Wheaties back in the day, you're going to dig this channel of deep musical nostalgia. Make sure to subscribe below right now. Click the red button and click the bell so you always know when our interviews and our latest come out. We got some good stuff coming. T-shirt of the day is below. Also check us out on Patreon. It's time for another episode from our series, The New Standards, the greatest songs in the history of everything. You know, even if you don't like this artist, this is a very compelling story, one of the best I've ever heard. Stick with it if you would. So after his 22nd birthday, Bob Dylan's life was about to change forever. His second album, The Free Will and Bob Dylan, had just hit the record shelves, and with it, Dylan went from the smoky folk clubs at Greenwich Village to the national spotlight. This wasn't just another folk record. This was a turning point. Packed with raw, politically charged lyrics and a bold new edge, the album introduced a fresh rock-infused take on folk music. And as the world took notice, success kept building for Bob. His next album hit big. He became a voice in the civil rights movement, and soon a tour in England turned him into a star across the Atlantic. But even with the world at his feet, Dylan wasn't restless. Fame wasn't what he'd imagined, and his frustration bubbled over in really unexpected ways. He actually clashed with Ed Sullivan, turning down a chance to play on the biggest talk show in America, big show in America. He was slammed for mouthing off on stage, with critics and fans accusing him of being high. The folk and political circles that once felt like home now left him feeling like a complete outsider. And though he'd already written a string of iconic songs like Blowin' in the Wind, The Times They Are Changin', and Subterranean Homesick Blues, he was starting to question if he even wanted to keep climbing the ladder that he'd been placed upon.
The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The wind for the times they are a-changin'.
By the spring of 1965, Dylan was at a breaking point. Wrapping up a grueling tour of England captured in D.A. Pennebaker's raw documentary, Don't Look Back, he was feeling exhausted and really disillusioned. During a stop in London, he turned to his trailblazing manager, Albert Grossman, and he announced that he was going to quit. His latest album, Bringing It All Back Home, had come out in February, and instead of praise, it stirred up a backlash. Fans and critics were unsettled by the electric guitars and the backing band, a sharp break from his folk roots. Dylan was pushing boundaries, but instead of excitement, he was met with resistance. It left him wondering if it was worth carrying on at all. But then came today's subject, the new standard, Like a Rolling Stone, and everything changed. It proved to be something that Bob could actually get behind because of how liberating it was. Now, in an interview, Bob was vulnerable and candid, holding nothing back when he stated, and I quote, "It gets exhausting when everyone around you is saying how much they dig you, but you can't even dig yourself." Although it wasn't planned to be a song at all, writing the words for Like a Rolling Stone was a cathartic way to rejuvenate himself, both emotionally and artistically.
Like a rolling stone.
In 1965, Bob Dylan immersed himself in a whirlwind of creativity, typing away feverishly as he crafted prose, poems, and songs. Footage from Don't Look Back captures him in his suite at the Savoy Hotel in London, lost in the rhythm of his writing. He later described Like a Rolling Stone as a long piece of vomit that eventually took shape as a song, a process he had never publicly associated with any of his other major works. Now, during an interview with CBC Radio in Montreal, Dylan reflected on the song's creation as a turning point in his career. He called it really his breakthrough, revealing how it shifted his perspective on his artistic direction. In that moment, he found himself not just writing, but discovering new depths to his creativity. When asked about the origins of Like a Rolling Stone, Bob's response hinted at his own surprise over what the song had become. He said it was 10 pages long. Actually, it might have been 20, just a minute. Dylan later shared with the Saturday Evening Post, no title, just a rhythm scrawled on paper, all about this steady, honest hatred aimed somewhere. He paused, searching for the right word. Not hatred, exactly. It was telling someone something they didn't know, telling them they were lucky. Revenge, maybe. Maybe that's it.
How does it feel?
In some accounts, Dylan claimed the stack was closer to 20 pages. Now, either way, it was a free-flowing Kerouac-like stream of thoughts, initially meant to kick off a novel until inspiration struck. In the tranquil surroundings of Woodstock, New York, many years before the concert, Bob Dylan transformed his initial burst of ideas on paper into the 4 verses and chorus of Like a Rolling Stone. Actually, when the handwritten lyrics went up for auction in 2014, the 4-page manuscript offered a glimpse into his creative process. It's amazing. It revealed that the complete refrain of the chorus didn't even make an appearance until the 4th page. By the way, the lyrics sold for $2 million, almost twice as much as what was paid for the Beatles' A Day in the Life the year before. An all-time record.
As you stare into the vacuum of his eyes.
One intriguing line, like a dog without a bone, that was ultimately discarded for Now You're Unknown. Bob had also played around with the idea of incorporating the name of the infamous mobster Al Capone into the rhyme section. In his experimentation, he jotted down potential lines like, "It feels real," "Does it feel real," "Shut up and deal," "Get down and kneel," and "Raw deal," all trying to find the perfect fit for "How does it feel?"
You're next, me on.
And in the end, he really did find the perfect fit for "How does it feel?" He composed the song on an upright piano, initially in the key of D flat, but then when it came time to record it, he switched it to C on the guitar. This marked the final step in a remarkable evolution of a classic. Bob would say in a quote, "I never thought of it as a song, till one day sitting at the piano, I heard it. The words on paper were singing, 'How does it feel?' Slow, deliberate, like it was following something just out of reach, and I wrote it. I didn't hold back, it was direct." Like a Rolling Stone wasn't overtly political like some of Dylan's earlier songs, but perfectly captured the anger and the disillusionment and really the rebellious spirit of that era.
How does it feel?
Like a Rolling Stone is particularly remarkable for the colorful cast of characters that surround its heroine. Music journalist Andy Gill captured the intrigue perfectly, noting the strangeness woven into the lyrics, and I'm going to quote him here. He said, "Fans were captivated debating who Miss Lonely could be."
To the finest school, all right, Miss Lonely, but you know you only used to get.
But even more perplexing were figures like Napoleon in rags, and most bizarre of all, the diplomat who rode a chrome horse while balancing a Siamese cat on his shoulder. Only Dylan. What on earth was going on here?
Who carried on his shoulder a Siamese cat.
This eccentric diplomat appears in the 3rd verse, adding to the song's surreal atmosphere and leaving listeners pondering the vivid imagery that Dylan conjured. You used to ride on the chrome horse with your diplomat, who carried on his shoulder a Siamese cat. Ain't it hard when you discover that he really wasn't where it's at? Ah.
He really wasn't where it's at.
After he took from you everything he could steal, perfect lyrics. In its 4 verses, Dylan targets a once privileged Miss Lonely, a fallen figure whose life of comfort and luxury has crumbled. "You better take your diamond ring, you better pawn it, babe," he warns, hinting that her descent is far from over.
But you better take your diamond ring, you better pawn it, babe.
This is one of those songs that over the years, fans and critics alike have tried to decode. Who is Miss Lonely? Who she might have been? Guesses have ranged from Joan Baez to Edie Sedgwick, rumored to have been romantically linked with Dylan around that time. Now, Dylan had no love for Andy Warhol's factory scene, and the disillusioned characters he paints in the song seem to echo really the personas in Warhol's world. Poor little rich girl Edie is often seen as a tragic figure, a victim caught in a cycle of abusive relationships. After breaking free from her troubled home life, she landed in New York, where she crossed paths with Andy Warhol. He quickly made her his muse, showcasing her as the shining star of his art scene. But as the spotlight faded and her 15 minutes of fame dwindled, Warhol moved on. Around the same time, Edie had a fleeting romance with Bob Dylan just before he married Sarah Lowndes. Many have speculated that this song was inspired by Edie, though it's important to note that this theory is supported only by really circumstantial evidence at best. Still, the connection has become part of the lore surrounding both of these artists, living on as a recognizable myth in its own right.
And now you're gonna have to get used to it.
Now, despite what some might think, the title Like a Rolling Stone actually has nothing to do with the Rolling Stones, or even Muddy Waters' Rolling Stone, the song that gave the band its name.
It's coming, you're gonna be a Rolling Stone.
Instead, Bob Dylan pulled the phrase from the old saying, "A Rolling Stone gathers no moss." But the real spark actually came from a Hank Williams song he'd always admired. In Williams' 1949 track Lost Highway, he sings, "I'm a Rolling Stone, all alone and lost." That line stuck with Dylan for the long haul. It captured a feeling of aimlessness and isolation, just the tone that he was looking for, especially in this song.
I'm a Rolling Stone, all alone and
Now, as Bob Dylan prepared to record Like a Rolling Stone, he invited renowned Chicago blues guitarist Mike Bloomfield to his Woodstock home for the weekend. Now, Bloomfield recalled the moment vividly and said, "The first thing I heard was Like a Rolling Stone. I assumed he wanted that bluesy string-bending sound that I was known for, but actually, Dylan said, 'Hey man, I don't want any of that B.B. King stuff.' I was kind of thrown off. What did he want from me?" Despite the confusion, they dove into the song together, and it was incredible. Bloomfield played in a way that he hoped would resonate with Dylan, and to his relief, Dylan responded enthusiastically, calling it groovy. It's probably the best way that Bob could put it.
Once upon a time, you dressed so fine.
During their first recording session on June 15th, they approached the song in a surprisingly different style, played it in 3/4 waltz time, with Dylan at the piano. Without any sheet music, they had to rely on their instincts, and through the chaotic energy of the session, they began to uncover the song's true essence. Now, it wasn't until the fourth take that they finally reached the first chorus, but after a harmonica fill, Dylan interrupted saying, "You know what, my voice is gone, man. You want to try it again?" The session wrapped up shortly after, leaving a real sense of unfinished business lingering in the air. Now, fans often point to the standout organ section as one of their favorite aspects of Like a Rolling Stone. This iconic sound owes its existence to Bob Dylan's producer, Tom Wilson. He had the foresight to invite Al Cooper to the recording session. A lot of people don't know that's Al Cooper. Tom Wilson, a former jazz producer, began working with Dylan on his second album, The Freewheelin' Bob Dylan, that was released in '63. He went on to produce Dylan's next 3 albums, but on Highway 61 Revisited, he only contributed to Like a Rolling Stone, marking it as the last song that he would ever produce for Dylan. Actually, after Tom Wilson's departure, Bob Johnson took over the production duties, overseeing all the other tracks on the album as well. But it was Wilson's decision to bring in Al Cooper that helped shape the sound of one of Dylan's most endearing classics. Al Cooper, who originally made his mark as a guitarist and then later became a successful music producer in his own right and a founding member of Blood, Sweat, and Tears, he played the iconic Hammond organ riff on Like a Rolling Stone, and he did this when he was just shy of his 22nd birthday. If you listen closely at the beginning of the song, you're going to notice the organ comes in slightly late, actually an 8th note behind the rest of the band. Despite not being a seasoned organ player, Al's unique touch caught Bob's ear. The way he played, it resonated with Dylan's vision for this song, and Dylan made sure to highlight Al's part in the final mix. It's definitely up against everything else. cemented the organ's unforgettable presence in that classic track to go along with Bob's soulful harmonica, Paul Griffin's great piano part, Joe Macho Jr. on bass, and Bobby Gregg on drums. Now, whenever Al Kooper is asked to identify his greatest musical achievement, he never hesitates. He always says it's definitely the organ part on Like a Rolling Stone. He gets a flood of emails and press about it all the time. It's like hitting the Game 7 home run to win the World Series. Once that breakthrough came during the session, when Like a Rolling Stone was reimagined in a rock format, Al Kooper's improvisation on the Hammond B2 organ added a captivating layer to the track. This helped the song finally take shape. It was submitted to the executives at Bob's label, Columbia Records.
Like a rolling stone.
However, the reaction was less than enthusiastic. The executives didn't like it. They frowned upon the song's length, over 6 minutes, and its bold electric sound. Concerned about its commercial viability, they hesitated to release it as a single. They weren't going to do it. They had no confidence that it would resonate with listeners at all. I mean, after all, 6 minutes and 13 seconds was the song. This was the 60s, where hit songs were normally 2 to 3 minutes. In fact, 3 minutes was pushing it. No way in hell a 6-minute song would ever get played or be a hit. And it was exceedingly rare for a song filled with such, dense lyrics to achieve commercial success. It was just too deep.
On the jugglers and the clowns when they all did tricks for you.
Now, Bob's manager, Albert Grossman, that I mentioned earlier, he was a game changer in the world of artist management, renowned for his shrewd defense of the artists that he represented. When the executives at Columbia Records demanded the song be shortened to make it more radio-friendly, Grossman stood firm. He told them, hell no, there would be no discussion. They would not shorten the length of the song. He believed in the artistic integrity of Bob Dylan's work, ready to fight for the vision that made it so groundbreaking. Defying conventional wisdom, Like a Rolling Stone shocked the label as it was a massive hit on the radio around the world. It steamrolled to number 2 in Canada and here in America on the Billboard Hot 100. It was the number 4 single in the UK, a number 7 hit in Australia and the Netherlands, and it hit number 9 in Sweden and Ireland and number 13 in West Germany and Belgium. A top 10 virtually everywhere.
People out drinking, thinking that they got it made.
Now, critics have called Like a Rolling Stone revolutionary for a lot of reasons. I get it. This is one time where the critics were right. I mean, the way it blends different musical elements, along with that, youthful, rebellious, cynical vibe in Dylan's voice, that's what stands out. But let's not forget that timeless, incisive question, how does it feel? I mean, it was transformative, helping to solidify Bob Dylan's shift from a folk singer to a bona fide rock star.
How does it feel?
It was a stick it to the man middle finger to anybody that pissed you off. Like he said, a revenge song. Today, it's hailed as one of the most influential songs in post-war popular music. In fact, it's been named the number 1 song ever by many major song polls over the years. Because of its cultural impact, it's arguably the most renowned song of the rock era. You can make an argument for it. I hear people all the time say, Bob Dylan, you just got a bad voice. Oh, they're so off the mark. I think his voice is perfect for what he sings. If this isn't one of your favorite songs of all time, I mean, honestly, I don't think you've ever really listened to the full song, really listened to the lyrics. I mean, Like a Rolling Stone, it's one of those iconic songs that have been reimagined by a ton of artists over the years. We're talking legends like Jimi Hendrix, the Rolling Stones themselves, not to mention the Wailers, Bruce Springsteen, John Mellencamp, Green Day. It's amazing how the song has touched so many different musicians, so many different decades later. It's not only touched them, it's changed them. It's changed the way they look at the world. In fact, speaking of Hendrix, this song was the song that made Jimmy decide to sing instead of just play the guitar. Before he heard Like a Rolling Stone, he considered himself only a guitarist, not a singer. But with this song, Dylan proved you didn't need a conventional voice to sing rock and roll. I mean, really, it inspired punk rock if you look at it that way. So Jimi was inspired to sing by this. In the early days of his career with the Jimi Hendrix experience, Jimi really had a special place in his heart for Bob Dylan's Like a Rolling Stone. I mean, you could often catch him performing it live, pouring his soul into every single note. Hendrix admired Dylan deeply, finding a connection in the song that resonated with his own experience. He said, "It made me feel that I wasn't the only one who ever felt so low." Reflecting on Dylan's words captured the feelings that all of us can relate to. Like I said, Dylan opened Jimi's eyes to the idea that you didn't have to have the quote, unquote, pop idol voice, the big voice to rock out. He showed that authenticity and emotion were what truly mattered in the truth of rock and roll, the truth of this music. Bob Dylan's voice. That's why I don't really take to this belief that, oh, Bob Dylan doesn't have a good voice. It's the feeling, man.
Like a rolling stone.
Actually, one of Hendrix's standout performances of Like a Rolling Stone took place at the legendary 1967 Monterey Pop Festival, where he lit up the stage and left the crowd in awe. And interestingly, Hendrix and Dylan only met one time, but that brief encounter didn't diminish Jimi's ability to bring out the raw emotions in Dylan's songs. He went on to deliver an unforgettable cover of All Along the Watchtower, proving just how deeply Bob's music had influenced him. It's really a beautiful reminder of how one artist can inspire another, creating a legacy that truly endures through time. Now, most people know this story, but I'm going to tell it anyway. Bob Dylan's shift to rock music was largely influenced by none other than John Lennon. It all went down when the Beatles dropped by to pay their respects to Dylan, another great band that was like this with Dylan. Clearly in awe of his work, Bob admired the band, but they felt like they could step up their lyric game. Lennon totally agreed, and he suggested that Bob should go electric with his next song. That night turned out to be a pivotal moment for both Bob Dylan and the Beatles. And it's been heavily rumored that the conversation took place on the same night that Bob introduced the Fab Four to marijuana. It was a legendary evening that changed the course of music history for everyone involved.
Going to Strawberry Field.
In 1966, Dylan told music journalist Ralph Gleason, "Rolling Stone's the best song I wrote." And years later, in 2004, he still held that song close to his heart. Speaking with Robert Hilburn, he described the writing process as if some sort of ghost was guiding him. He said, "It gives you the song and it goes away. You don't know what it means except that the ghost picked me to write the song." That's a really fascinating glimpse into how he viewed his craft. Almost like he was just a channel for something much bigger.
You shouldn't let other people get your kicks for you.
I mean, Bob Dylan, before that dropped, the music charts were filled with those short, catchy love songs. Most of them, like I said, 2.5 minutes. And then here comes Bob Dylan, breaking every rule with a 6-minute and 13-second track packed with dark, brooding, rebellious poetry. It was an historic landmark for popular music, there's no question.
Like a rolling stone.
My dad loved Bob Dylan. This was one of his favorite songs ever. First time he played it for me, I was like 8 or 9 years old, and I remember he told me to close my eyes. He said, "Listen to every single word." I did that very thing, and every single word washed over me like a tsunami. It was truly the sound of freedom. Then when he said after it was over, "How did that feel?" I just looked at him and said, "Like a Rolling Stone." He smiled and he said, "You really did listen." After hearing that, I was a lyrics guy, and I still am. Thanks, Bob. Leave us a comment about Like a Rolling Stone, truly one of the greatest songs of all time. The sound of freedom. I mean, you sing it and you feel like you're busting out of prison. I love this song. Share your memories, share your feelings about Bob Dylan. What's his best song, his best work? man, when he was with the Traveling Wilburys, and I just love it all. Let's have a great discussion. If you like our content, we invite you to subscribe. Till next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.